That was good. Yeah. All right. All right. I know that I don't necessarily need this with my voice, but for the people who are watching online at home, I think it's beneficial. So, how's everybody tonight? Y'all good? Good. It's been a long day, a long week on my side. I hope you've had a better time than I have. Definitely want. I think y'all would. There we go. That's better. Uh, do this as a prop now. um, I did text with Matt. If any of you have not checked in on him, want to know his father, I know had surgery Monday, and then I texted with him Tuesday morning, and they were going to do another surgery. He was having low blood, something flesh-eating bacteria, which sounds horrific. And so they were doing another surgery Tuesday. And Matt said as of this afternoon that the dad was doing as well as he could be doing at this particular moment. So I know that they will continue to covet our prayers as you say your daily prayers and such. All right, let me get transitioned here. All right, so you guys are going to pretend to be in the young college kids class. All right, I know, exciting, right? Going back in time. I texted Matt and I said, hey, I've already got a lesson together. It's for my, you can stay, man. I teach your daughter, I can teach you too, it's fine. Yeah, that's right. And I said, I've already got a lesson together, take something off of you. And he said, yeah, please, that'd be great. So you're going to be jumping in where, Brennan and Jordan and Maddie and Hannah and Brooks and I have been studying on Wednesday nights. For a little bit. We have been studying. At first we were looking at what is faith? What does faith look like? Trying to get a faith that kind of, is a sticky faith. A faith that will transcend out of just, being in mom and dad's house, and when you're out on your own, you adopt your own faith. And then once we got through with that, we moved into, well, let's look at who it is that we put our faith in and where our faith resides, and that's in Jesus. And so we've been looking through John, and tonight, if you wouldn't mind, turning with me to John chapter 10, which is where we were going to pick up, looking at some of the I am statements that Jesus makes. And so that's where we're going to pick up. This is, and as you turn there, and we're going to read a good bit of text, because I don't know where you, as far as if you've read this recently or not. So we will look at the text. But I love, I'm a former English teacher, and I love looking at this text because it's a text that it reminds me a lot about what I used to teach when it came to literature. Because Jesus just doesn't come out and just say things, right? And on the other Gospels, we see a lot of parables where Jesus tries to relate a difficult to understand concept to us so that we can understand better at a deeper level. And here in John, he has a different times in teaching and talking to people. He has a lot of the I am statements. And we can understand Jesus, I think, through a deep study of looking at, well, how does he describe himself? And tonight, I want us to look at the fact that he says, I am a door or a gate, and I am a shepherd. And just kind of look at those and see how they kind of work with us and help us to grow in our faith and our walk with God. All right, so if you would, start with me. Everybody should have, I've heard all the Bibles stop moving the pages, right? Nothing sounds quite like a Bible page turning, right? So I know everyone's done that, and those of you on your apps were there like 3 minutes ago. So read with me from John chapter 10. I'll start with verse 1. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, and they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. And that, totally understand that, right? Because if, and when I learned anything with literature, we would study a poem, we would study a story. Everybody outside of maybe Hannah, who's one of my greatest students of all time, right, would have trouble understanding that on the first read. They're like, why doesn't he just say what he means? Why does he wrap this up in flowery language or some sort of an analogy like we see here? But I think there's a reason why writers do this, and Jesus obviously does this. Because when I could write a note to my wife that said, I love you. To the point, she understands what I'm saying. There's no misreading that, right? She's like, oh, that's nice, right? That's exactly how the tone she would probably use to say it. Oh, that's nice, right? Nearly 26 years of marriage, I've said that at least 10 times. She's understood. She understands that. I've said it more than 10, like 12. All right. But if somebody takes the time to write a poem to try to express their love through different avenues, through different comparisons, right? Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Shakespeare, right? And you sit there and go, that sounds so pretty. What does that mean? I don't know. Think about it for a little bit. And you sit there and you let it marinate in your mind a little bit, and you're sitting there thinking about how complex somebody's love and their feelings are for you, and you spend time with it. I think Jesus is doing something very similar. He's like, I'm going to explain my role to you, but I want to do it so that you have to spend time marinating that in your mind and thinking about that. To understand, because our relationship is a little bit bigger than just saying, I am thee. I want you to think about what a shepherd and sheep are, how they work. Because if you explore that in your mind, you're going to understand our relationship, meaning Jesus and the sheep, right? And we, of course, being the sheep. You're going to understand the complexity a little more. But it doesn't surprise me in verse 6, and they were like, we are so confused. We don't understand what you're saying. Okay? So he continues, verse 7. Truly, truly, I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. I'm sure that really cleared it up for them, right? Because they were like, oh, you're a door. What in the world are we doing, right? But we're going to keep expanding. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the door, verse 9. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. Mark this verse. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. Verse 10 is going to be a powerful verse. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. He who is a hired hand and not a shepherd, he does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming, leaves the sheep, flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's hired hand and cares nothing for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me, and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must bring them also, and they will listen to my voice. So there will be one flock, one shepherd. For this reason, the Father loves me, because I lay down my life that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down. and I have authority to take it up again. The charge I have received, or this charge I have received from my Father. And again, you read verses 19 through 21, and there's people thinking that he's possessed by a demon because he's just told them, I'm a door, and I'm the good shepherd. And they're like, this is not exactly what we were expecting here, Rabbi. Right? So, let's move on down for time's sake, down to verse 24. So a little bit of time has passed. And they're like, can you just tell us if you're the Christ? Verse 23. And so Jesus answers in he says that in verse 24. And Jesus answers them in verse 25. I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness about me, but you do not believe, because you are not among my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish, and no one will snatch them out of my hand. My Father, who has given them to me, is greater than all. No one is able to snatch them out of the Father's hand. I and the Father are one. And you're more than welcome to read the rest of that and get it all in context and such. But I'm going to stop right there for the rest of the lesson tonight. But we see some metaphors there. Jesus is the door. Jesus is a good shepherd. That means in the analogy that I am the sheep. You know, and I think when we look at this, and you know, I've been raised in the going to church my entire life, and I've heard the sermons on sheep and shepherd. One of the very first things I ever memorized as a little kid at Salsa Creek was Psalm 23. And I've got another sermon for that one. If y'all ever need a sermon, I've got it in my back pocket. I've never used it before either. I'm ready to try it out. But we hear the analogy a lot. But does it resonate to us in a world where I look out and I'm pretty sure, I don't know what all of you do or what you do for a living, but I'm pretty sure no one here raises sheep. You may have some lambs or some cattle or something, but I don't think there's a lot of shepherds in Itawamba County. As soon as after this, somebody's going to come up and tell me that they're from a long line of shepherds, and that's fine. I'll take it back. But as I understand most people, we don't know that analogy that well. So does it resonate? Does it still work for us? And I started thinking about, one of the projects that I used to do teaching. I think, Hannah, your class was one of the first ones we ever did, the Hero Project. Do you remember that? Yeah. For some reason in our world, we love heroes. One of the most popular movie series is the Marvel Universe, right? We love Spider-Man, Batman, Iron Man, Aquaman. I don't know. I'm not really good at this. But we like superheroes. And that's been true forever. Very first ever Halloween outfit I had, Superman, right? First birthday cake I ever remember myself with a 3 or 4 year old was a Superman birthday cake. I don't know why. Probably because I was a sick, scrawny little kid and I just really wanted to be Superman. But we get the concept of a hero. What do we like about heroes? Well, we want somebody who can save us from ourselves. We want somebody who can protect us when it doesn't seem like we can protect ourselves. We want somebody who can just kind of, like with Superman, guide us in the way we're supposed to do. Like Superman has no weaknesses. Like he's too good of a superhero, really, right? He has no flaws. Well, there's something about that gives us comfort. And if we really think about it, that same mentality is very similar to the sheep and the shepherd. So does the shepherd analogy work today like it did 2,000 years ago when Jesus spoke these words? I think absolutely. Let's think for a second about sheep. What do you know about sheep? Well, I don't really know a whole lot, so therefore I, watched some YouTube videos and read a little bit on them. But I know sheep are pretty much flock animals. They like to stay together. They know that they do best when they're together. They typically don't like to go isolated or solo. There's safety in numbers. And if we really think about it as people, we kind of, for the most part, feel the same way. Yeah. Why do we like our, sports teams, our political parties, our community events, our, work? Why do we hang out with the people we do? Probably because they think, act, do a lot of the same ways that you do. They believe, have the same morals, same values, and all that stuff. As a whole, people, we are kind of made to be kind of a flock-based people. We do better with staying in numbers. And I like the fact that Jesus says that he's the good shepherd and his sheep are good at recognizing his voice. If you go back and you look at verses 4 and 5, just as a reminder, he says, when he brought out all of his own, he goes before them. The sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow. I read one little story of where sometimes shepherds will take all their sheep down to the same watering hole. And they'll just let the sheep, hang out, and the shepherds kind of go and do their thing, talk, catch up, talk shop and all that sort of stuff. And when it's time for them to take the sheep and go, they don't care that they're all intermixed. They go, whatever the magic sheep word is, or sound that they make, or a little, musical inclination, whatever they've trained, and their sheep follow only the voice of the one that they've been trained to follow. And I thought, well, that's just really cool. Are we like that? Are we good sheep? Do we only listen to the one voice? And I started thinking, well, is there sometimes competition that we put in place of voices that we listen to sometimes that are maybe not the voice of the Good Shepherd? And I started thinking, when God gave us free will, he kind of made us a little bit different than the sheep in that aspect, in the fact that we can choose to listen to voices. We can train ourselves to listen to get input from things that sometimes are not in line with God's righteousness, with God's holiness, with God's glory. There's going to be sometimes things that pull us away. Maybe we listen to rumors. Maybe we listen to people, they're gossiping about things, and we lend our ears to it. Maybe we listen to people tell us that we should prioritize ourselves over other people. Maybe we listen to things that are trying to create division within his flock. Division within your work friends or with your community. It creates doubt. You don't want to trust your fellow Christians. You don't want to trust God. There's a lot of ways that you can probably think about it, that you from life experience, that there's voices, there's different inputs that want to train you away from listening to the one true shepherd's voice. And then we look at verse 10, and I love verse 10, and I know we've all probably heard the sermons on it. Two parts to that, two sentences in that verse. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I, the good shepherd, Jesus, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. That word abundant really popped out to me. Again, background as an English teacher and literature teacher. One of the things that we taught a lot with my juniors was the concept of the American dream, right? Come to America, work hard, get stuff, right? Work hard, get the house, get the cars, get the career, get the promotion, get the pay raise, get the lifestyle, physical lifestyle that you think. Abundant life. But then I started thinking with application to this, well, is that the definition of abundant life? How do I define that? What voice do I want to listen to that defines what abundant life is? Is it the world that says, hey, this is what success looks like? This is the physical success? Go back to what Richard read for us from 2 Corinthians chapter 5. When he says, we're not going to consider people in the flesh anymore. We're going to consider them according to a spiritual standard, not a physical standard. Rich or poor, doesn't care, right? Do they have a heart for God? Are they living for God? Do they love God? Right? There's a concept that I want us to think about when it comes to abundant life. But I think a lot of times, some of my friends, sometimes Chris, who has this microphone right there, he needs to be careful. But sometimes Chris listens to the wrong voices that tells him what an abundant life is. Because I've chased the career. I've chased the the job promotion and thought, that's what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes I just need to relax and trust God that it's going to work out. He's going to place me where I need to be to serve Him and help the most people see God. There's another debate that I want to throw out there right quick. We're listening to the wrong voice, and that comes up a lot with the concept of just thinking that if a person is just a good person, then they're okay, right? It frustrates me sometimes when I know a person, did not live for God, and then they pass away, and I know you want to say things in a nice way, but they just assume, well, you'll see they're in heaven. Like that person, they show no life for God in any way, shape, form, or fashion. They never submitted to God's will. They lived a selfish life. I'm not trying to judge, but it's a dangerous concept, because if we propagate that idea, man, I'm starting to sound like a preacher. If we propagate that idea, our younger generation just thinks, well, we're all going to heaven anyway. All we got to do is just be a good person. And then they're going to take that Galatians chapter 5, verses 19 through 21, where you see that laundry list of just horrible things, and they think, well, if I don't do those, good person. I don't have to submit myself to God's will. I don't have to worry about salvation. I don't have to worry about being a new person and allowing God's grace to work within my heart and train it to seek God's glory. I don't have to do that. I mean, look at the list. Galatians 5, 19 through 21. Most of us would never even think about even doing those, because those are some straight up evil, right? I mean, you wouldn't do those. Maybe some of them, not Indian, but there's some things in there you're just like, I wouldn't do that. There's a danger, though, because the God says, Jesus says very clearly that He is the way. He is the truth. Nobody gets to heaven. Nobody enters the sheepfold except what? Through Jesus. You can't just sit there and go, well, that's where the sheep are. I'm going to be over here, but I'm going to be a good person. Now, Jesus says you have to go through me. Nicodemus comes up to him in John chapter 3 and says, what? Rabbi, you obviously are, sent from God. And he says, unless you're born of water and of the Spirit, you have to be reborn of the water and the Spirit. Those are two things, right? You have to make a decision. You have to go through Christ. You don't get to just not and then still get the benefits. And that sometimes I think is a danger we and especially our younger people, because they look and they go, well, I don't do bad things. Why do I have to go meet Jesus where Jesus says you have to meet me at? Does that make sense? That's a voice that sometimes that I think we have to be careful that people aren't listening to. There is need for salvation. Look at John 10 and verse 9. Jesus uses the word that if anyone enters by me, he will be saved. And he'll be able to find pasture. All right, that's where you can insert your Psalm 23 sermon if you want. You look at verses 27 and 28 that we read. He uses the word again. And he says in 27, my sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me, and I give them what? Eternal life. It's through Jesus that happens. The Good Shepherd. We have to make sure that we're listening to His voice. I read Romans chapter 3 and verse 23. I learned that I fall into a category of somebody who has sinned. I didn't necessarily have to read just that verse to already know that, but I know it says that all have sinned and fallen short of the will of God. We all have. You all in here struggle with something. Satan knows what your struggle is. Nobody in here, I don't care how long you've been a Christian and you've been working. Satan knows, he knows your weakness. He knows your temptation, and he's going to work to get that between you and God at some point and make it seem overwhelming. Fortunately for you, I'm sure most of us have been walking in the light as He is in the light. You're growing in your maturation. You're maturing in your spiritual nature. But some folks that we may know maybe haven't. Maybe they have been listening to another voice. That other voice that maybe is pulling them away does three things. He says in John chapter 10, verse 10, it does what? It steals, it kills, and it destroys. Very simple. When you're listening to the wrong voice, what you hear a lot of times is existence is just horrible. I don't want to go to work on Monday. I don't want to go to work, do this. I don't want to live my life and do the things that God has put before me because it's just drudgery. I'm sorry, guys, but that's the wrong attitude. Everybody's like, what? You take that back. I cannot want to go to work on Mondays. But that's not the right, that's listening to the negativity of life. It's the negative, the aspect of just everything's boring. Worship is boring. Worship is monotonous. The Christian life is boring and it's monotonous. It's the worrying about constant things. The writer of Ecclesiastes in chapter 1 and verse 8 says has profound wisdom when he says, the eye is not satisfied by seeing or the ear filled with hearing. There's a law of diminishing returns. When we chase the wrong thing, at some point, you work hard enough, you're probably going to get the job. You're going to get the opportunity. But what's it going to be next? There's always going to be something that you're chasing, and it's exhausting. You talk to a drug addict or somebody who's gone through alcoholism or any pornography addiction or anything of that nature. You talk to them, and they'll tell you that at some point they had to increase whatever it is that they were dealing with to get the buzz or the high or the satisfaction. And at some point, it takes them down spiraling and spiraling and spiraling, and then they've lost control. Because when you listen to the wrong voice, you get placed in a room with the walls called sin and shame. That's what it is. You listen to the wrong voice, and you're not walking in the light as he's in the light. You're in a room, it's isolated, you're by yourself, and Satan partitions you off with walls called sin and shame. You're in a pattern of sin, and he wants to constantly make you feel bad about the sin that you're in. Something called shame, and it weighs you down, and then you feel like you're never good enough. You can't go back to church because, they won't understand. And one of the things that we have to do, because obviously, is not get ourselves trapped in rooms with sin and shame or the walls holding us in. We got to be willing to talk to people when we find ourselves in that situation and get support and actually believe and trust that, that it's good to confess our faults one to another. But sometimes I don't think we trust that. We got to love people enough that when they do, we go, I completely understand. Because we can't ask people in the community, people who left the church, who've left the flock, to come back if we don't understand how difficult it's going to be. It's not just as easy as me calling you up and say, hey, you haven't been to church in 3-4 weeks, a month, 2 years, whatever. Love to see you come back. That's not going to happen. Because why? They got sin and shame staring in the face. And shame is a strong emotion. That bell didn't ring. We're staying all night. Paul preaching to midnight. All right. But sin and shame are staring you in the face. And that is hard to overcome because of listening to the wrong voices. And we have to be sympathetic because we don't think about physical. We think about spiritual. We think about souls. And we know that soul needs to get back into the sheepfold. And that's through Jesus. And I think that's a powerful message. Jesus is the way. He is the truth. He is the life. The life that he gives is the life of abundance. We didn't quite get to that one. I'll try to rattle these last page of notes off of really fast. But Jesus, the abundant life, Jesus offers a new creation. He offers you a blank slate, a fresh start. He offers you rescue. salvation, regeneration, sanctification, justification. He offers you peace, eternal hope, God's love. The removal of guilt, the removal of shame, the removal of sin. Paul says in Romans that at one point we were slaves to sin. Every one of us. And there may have been times in our life, because I'm sure everybody's not, your life isn't just the roller coaster that just goes up. At some point, your roller coaster goes down. And at some point, the roller coaster plateaus. And then it goes down, and then it goes up, right? I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. That's the truth for every single one of us. And we have to be able to forgive ourselves, because God's forgiven us. But we also have to be able to extend that same grace, that same love to the people that we interact with. We're stuck in a room, constantly reminded of sin and shame. And have a hard time wanting to come to God, because shame is one of the most powerful tools that Satan uses to keep people from coming through Jesus. I want to end it right there, because that's my last page notes. And then they're going to ring that second bell in about a minute. So I'm going to close this with prayer, if that's okay with everybody, and then we'll be dismissed. Father in heaven, we thank you for the day. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for protecting us and giving us the opportunity tonight to study your will, to study from your word. Help us, God, to listen to your voice, to train ourselves to embrace your grace and to write your word on our heart, and to love you more each day. Help us to be empathetic, to be listeners, to be caring, to care about the lost. Help us to be each day renewed in our love and zeal for lost souls, for encouraging our fellow brothers and sisters. Help us, God, to increase our love for you, and doing so, increase our love for each other. Bless this congregation, bless this church family. We know and trust that you will give us what we need, and help us, Father, to take the tools that you supply us with and to share those with everyone that we come across this upcoming week. It's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.